Welcome back, everybody. It's great to be here in Israel. My name's Ofer. For those of you who have never met me, who haven't come on a tour to Israel with me, then I am a 20-year veteran in the tour industry. And in the last 11 months or so, tourists can come to Israel. So I thought, let's bring Israel to you via the internet. And this is my second webinar. We talked about the Temple Mount history. You can see the background behind me. This is the Temple Mount area. And today we're going to talk about calendars and dates and holidays and see how they're mixing and matching. And we're going to try to answer a question. First off, why is it that when we celebrate Hanukkah, this year it was on the 9th of December, and next year it's going to be on the 6th of December. And a year after that, it might be on the 15th of December. The Jewish calendar is different than the civilian calendar that is used in most places around the world, what everybody knows as the Gregorian calendar. And the Jewish calendar is a lunar solar calendar. The months are actually aligned with the moon, and we align the calendar itself with the solar calendar. And unfortunately, they don't match. In a lunar year, if we count 12 months in a lunar year, we have 354 days. In a solar year, we have 365 and a quarter days. It's not exactly a quarter, but somewhere in that area. So while the dates in the Jewish calendar remain the same, if we are celebrating on the 25th of the 10th month, a holiday, because of this mismatch, what happens is that in the January, February Gregorian calendar, it seems like the dates are moving. And I'm going to try and show a little bit of the different calendars here and maybe give even a different theory to a different solar calendar that may have been used in the temple days by the Jewish people. Let's just make sure everybody is in line with all of the different calendars that we're going to talk about. And we'll start with the most famous one, the Gregorian calendar. Today, that calendar begins with January, ends with December. And if we count from January to December, we see that December is the 12th month, which is a little bit strange because the word December is derived from Deca, which is 10. And if we go to September, September is 7. And yet in the calendars today, we call it the 9th month. And October, like octopus, 8. October is actually the 10th month, and November, Noventa is 9. Even though Noventa is supposed to be the 9th month, today we call it as the 11th month. What happened? Originally, the Roman calendar begins in the month of March. And then we count from March to December. We see March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and then December actually is the 10th month. We didn't even have July and August at this point. They only came in about 2,000 years ago. The original calendar was March, April, May, June, quintilis, the word quinta, like 5, and sextilis. This was the 6th month. But then came two very important Roman Caesars, Julius Caesar, and he decided to adopt the month of quintilis, making it July, and then Augustus making the sextilis, the 6th month, named after him. So we have July and August, the changing of the names. And a little bit later, they also added 2 months before March, and those are January, February. And that kind of pushed everything 2 months ahead. So we have January, February, March. This is month number 1, 2, and 3. And then instead of quintilis and sextilis, we have July and August. And September, the 7th month originally, becomes the 9th month. And therefore, December eventually becomes the 12th month of the year. This was basically adopted in the 17th century with a few other changes by Gregorius. He was one of the popes in the Catholic world, and it soon spread throughout the entire Catholic world, and later it spread into most of the rest of the world, but not everybody uses this calendar. And as I said, the Jewish people have a different calendar, which is a 354-day calendar. Our months have numbers in the Bible, and they're just called 1 through 12. On the 6th day in the first month, on the 8th day in the ninth month, and so on and so forth. We adopted names in Babylon. And when the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon, we spent 50 years there, at least. Some people even stayed longer than that. But after 50 years, we were allowed to come back to the city of Jerusalem and to the land of Israel. We rebuilt the temple. And at this point, we see that the names of the months are different. They're actually Babylonian names. So we have names like Kislev and Tishrei. We have Nisan and Iyar. These are all Babylonian names that were adopted. Some of them are named after the time of the year. Some of them have a meaning of beginning or bloom and things like that. And this is the modern day calendar that is used. As I say, 354 days divided into 12 months, lunar calendar. But I mentioned this at the beginning, we have to accommodate the fact that the solar year is 365 and a quarter. So if we're subtracting the 365 and the 354 days, we see that there is a difference of 11 days. So every 2 or 3 years in the Jewish traditions, we actually add 1 month. And we add this just before the first month in the Jewish calendar, which is called Nisan. And we'll get to those names and where exactly this first month is supposed to be and why it's there. It's not every 3 years exactly. We have a cycle of 19 years in which 7 times during those 19 years, we have to add that 1 month to our count. Okay, hopefully everything is clear, at least to this point. Now I want to introduce you to a different solar calendar that has nothing to do with the months that you know, January, February, March, April, May. We're going to share the screen over here with this diagram that I created. And we have this calendar diagram over here, and I'm marking a quarter of it. 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. Every piece of this pie is 30 days exactly. We have 12 months like this, 364 days. And then between each quarter, we have this +1 that is an added day to each of the quarters. So all in all, if we count how many of these days we have in one of these quarters, we actually see that we have 91 days. Now 91 is divisible by 7 exactly. It is 13 weeks. And if we multiply that by 4, we have exactly 364 days in this solar calendar that I'm looking at right now. Now, why is this important? 364 is divisible by 7, 52 weeks. And what happens if we're using this calendar is that every date that is given to us in the Bible falls on a specific day during the week. And then the following year, it will be exactly the same as the year before that. Remember what we said at the beginning of this webinar? When we look at the Jewish calendar and try to superimpose that on the civilian Gregorian calendar, it seems like the dates are moving, or at least the days are moving. Hanukkah that we just celebrated last week started on Thursday this year. Next year, it won't start on Thursday. It will probably start on Monday or Tuesday. And the year after that, maybe on a Friday. And the year after that, on a different day. And this calendar over here, the one I'm kind of drawing on right now, this one, if we have Passover, falling on a Wednesday this year. Next year, it's going to be on a Wednesday. Following year, it's going to be on a Wednesday. In fact, every year for the rest of our lives, it's going to be on a Wednesday because it is divisible by 7. Now, a solar year, as we already mentioned, is 365.25 or so days. And this one only has 364. There is a discrepancy here as well. So there are different theories as to what happens with this solar calendar. One of them is that since we're missing 7 days after 7 years, we just add 1 week somewhere around here. We add another week to this calendar, and that accounts for the 1 day that we're missing every single year. And then every 28 years, we add 2 weeks. Again, right here in this area, because we are missing a quarter of a day every year. For 28 years, you multiply that and you get a full week that we need to account for. So every 7 year we add 1 week, and every 28 years we add 2 weeks, and we are back in the 365 days of the solar calendar. So where do we get this new 364-day calendar? Well, we actually find it in the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Assyrians, according to one theory, had this as their own calendar. This is the calendar that they followed. And because this is a solar calendar and they follow the sun, they call themselves the sons of light. And anyone who uses the lunar calendar, the moon calendar, is the son of darkness. One of the impressive scrolls that were found is titled the Sons of Light Against the Sons of Darkness. This is an eschatological scroll talking about the end of days war between the people of the community, the Sons of Light who follow the solar-based calendar, against everyone who uses the lunar-based calendar, the Sons of Darkness. And amongst those who use the lunar calendar are also the Kohanim at the temple. And there is a theory that says that the Essene community, the ones that we find in the Dead Sea, actually left the city of Jerusalem because the Kohanim at the temple decided to switch calendars and adopt the Greek moon-based lunar calendar. The Essene belief is that the solar calendar that I just showed you, the one with the 364 days, was the original one that was used in the temple. And this was the original one used during the first temple period, not just the second temple period. And the people who were in charge of the temple were the Levites, and they are descendants of Aaron. And altogether, all of the Israelite people are actually descendants of Abraham, who is a descendant of a man called Hanoch, Enoch. Enoch is the son of Yered. He is the 7th generation from Adam, and he brought with him the divine calendar, and therefore the temple holds the sacred time, God's time. In fact, the word temple, the word temple in Latin or in French is derived from the word temp, T-E-M-P, which means time. So the temple is where we have the divine time. And when we look at the Jewish people and the Christians and the Muslims, we see that they told us what time of day it is. What is it, the beginning of the month, the beginning of the day, the end of the day, the middle of the day, from the holy sites that they have. In the Jewish period, 3 times a day, a man would go to one of the corners of the Temple Mount, high above the city, and he would blow a silver trumpet to let everybody know that it's the beginning of the day, that it's the middle of the day, that it is the evening time for sacrifices. And 2 people would come to the Sanhedrin who sat at the temple. The Sanhedrin is kind of like the Supreme Court of the Jewish people 2,000 years ago. And when these 2 people can vouch for the fact that they saw a new moon, then a new month would have been declared at the temple. And then using bonfires, they would light them atop the hills, and they would let everybody know that a new month came, but it all came from the temple area, the area that holds God's divine time. The Christians later on, instead of having a man with a trumpet blowing it during the day, they had a high bell tower. And every time the bells rang, people knew what time of day it was. And then come the Muslims, and they send a man to the top of the highest tower, or to the top of a high tower, where he is supposed to call out for prayer 5 times during the day. So we see that every religion has its own way, even though the tradition seems to be pretty much the same. You go to a high place and you make some kind of a noise, whether it's a trumpet, a bell, or you just call out to let people know the time of day. So the Essenes believe that this calendar was brought to us by Hanoch, Enoch. And it's a very interesting character. I would like to read a little passage from the Bible that talks about Hanoch. This is Genesis chapter 5, starting at verse 18. And Jared lived 162 years and begot Enoch. And Jared lived after he begot Enoch 800 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. And Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begot Methuselah 300 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This is a very unique passage in the Bible. It is right in the area where we are given the descendants of Adam. And when we count, we find that Enoch is actually the 7th generation after Adam. We see this also in the New Testament. It is mentioned there. If we go to the Epistle of Jude, chapter 1, verse 14, it says, Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied. And it talks about a prophecy of, I think, 10,000 angels. Now, the number 7, again, matches that calendar that I showed you where everything is divisible by 7. And notice the amount of years that Enoch lives. It says that he lived 365. 365 years. We have a solar calendar of 365 days. And this is a clue as far as the Essenes are concerned as to the calendars that we are supposed to have. Enoch doesn't die. As we saw just before him, Jared, his father, lived 162 years, had Enoch, and after he had Enoch, he lived in 800 years and begot sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. But with Enoch, after he gives birth to Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and begot sons and daughters, and all the days were 365. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. He is the first one that we see that was lifted up by God. And as a result, in literature, we actually have a book called the Book of Enoch. It is not in the Jewish Bible, but the scholars definitely know of it. It is divided into 5 portions, and one of the portions talks about astrology and times, and in there we find this Essene calendar mentioned again. And a special calendar that I want to show you how it works in terms of how the days match the biblical dates that are given. So let's move to this board. Here we go. Every quarter begins on a Wednesday. This is the first of the first month. And then we have 13 weeks when we add the +1 between the quarters. I hope you remember that we have that +1. We have 91 days. And as you can see, I've marked here 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Each one has 30 days plus the 1, making it 91. And notice that the third month ends on a Monday. We add the +1, which is a Tuesday. And then we begin the 4th month right over here. We begin the 4th month again on a Wednesday. So let's do that again. We begin the 4th month on a Wednesday. And we'll begin the 7th month on a Wednesday. And we'll begin the 10th month on a Wednesday. So these three right here, 1, 2, 3, are going to be exactly the same every quarter. So as you can see, what I did was, this is a sample of month number 1, 4, 7, and 10. This is a sample of months 2, 5, 8, 11. And we have, of course, the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and the 12th months. Now, in this calendar, the months do not have names. They are numbered 1 through 12. And even though in this sample, I wrote Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, again, the biblical days are not named. They are numbered. So we have day number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Shabbat, the only day that actually has a name. The root word for Shabbat in Hebrew is to cease, because God ceased on the 7th day. This is a special day of rest, obviously. So let's see some of these dates from the Bible and how they match in this solar calendar that I have for you. I'm going to give you the actual passage and what happened in that passage. So in the book of Genesis, book 7, chapter 7, I should say, verse 11, it says, in the 2nd month, on the 17th of the month. This is the 2nd month, and this is the 17th of the month. It turns out to be a Sunday. This is the beginning of the flood. We're talking about the story of Noah. And then in chapter 8, verse 4, on the 7th month, 17th of the month. This is the 7th month over here, and this is the 17th, turns out to be a Friday. This is when the ark rests. Then we have in chapter 8, verse 5, the first of the month, the first day in the 10th month, the first day in the 10th month, right over here, the tops of the mountains are seen. The water is starting to dry out. And then in chapter 8 again, we're still talking about Noah on the first day of the first month. Again, because this is the same as the 10th and the 7th and the 4th, the first month, the first day is going to be a Wednesday. Let's do a different color for the book of Exodus. We have the 10th day of the first month. In chapter 12, verse 3, we are taking the lamb and we need to keep it until the 14th of the month. So we are told that on the 10th of the first month, this is what we're supposed to do. And again, in chapter 12, verse 6, on the 14th of the same month, we're still talking about the first month. So the 14th is a Tuesday. This is when the blood of the lamb was ordered to be put on the posts and the lintel. Again, in chapter 12, verse 18, until 1/20th day at even. So until the 21st of the month. It's the same month, the first month, and it is a Tuesday again. And we are building the tabernacle according to Exodus 40, verse 2, on the first day in the first month, right over here. Look at that. A lot of things are happening here. And I skipped one. So in chapter 16, verse 1, on the 15th day of the second month, the Israelites are led to the wilderness of Zin. Where's the 15th of the second month? There it is. We are now on the second month. Let's go with Leviticus. Leviticus tells us the following. Chapter 16, verse 29, on the 7th month, the 10th day is Yom Kippur. We are back here on the 7th month, and it is the 10th day, Yom Kippur. And then we have the 7th month, the first day. Look at that. A lot of things are happening here. This is the blasts of horn. Interestingly, in modern day Judaism, the blasts of horn is actually referred to as Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year's. Even though it's the 7th month, it is still called Jewish New Year's. We'll get to that a little bit later. And then on the 15th day of the 7th month, here we go, another Wednesday, we are celebrating Sukkot, also known as Tabernacles in English. We are going to the book of Numbers. And in the book of Numbers, we are told that in the second month on the first day, this is chapter 1, verse 1, there is a census in the wilderness of Sinai. And in chapter 9, verses 1 through 5 talks about Passover again. I'm not going to mark them. They're all over here in the first month. But then it tells us that there is a second Passover in the second month on the 14th day, right over here, Thursday. And then we're told in chapter 10, verse 11, that on the 20th day on the second month, there was a cloud above the tabernacle, and it started taking the people from Sinai to Paran. And then on the fifth month, on the first day, this is taken from chapter 33, verse 38, Aaron dies on Mount Hor. So we look at the fifth month, there it is, and it is the first day, another event that takes place here. Deuteronomy, I found one date. It tells us that on the 11th month, we haven't had the 11th month, but it's right over here on the first day. There we go. Moses speaks to the congregation. And then let's take something out of the first 5 books of the Bible, and we have 2 Kings, where in chapter 25, it tells us, verse 1, it tells us that on the 10th month, on the 10th day, we have already made this connection, but this is when Nebuchadnezzar starts a siege over the city of Jerusalem. On the 5th month, on the 7th day, 5th month, 7th day, we have Nebuzaradan, or Nebuzaradan, who is a captain of the Nebuchadnezzar army, comes to Jerusalem. And finally, on the 12th month, we haven't had anything from this area, but on the 12th month, on the 27th day, we go to 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 27. Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, is set out of prison, and this is the 12th month on the 27th. Now look at something incredible with this calendar that I just marked all of the dates. Nothing is on Shabbat. Nothing on Shabbat in any of the dates that I have just mentioned. And as far as the Essenes were concerned, this is a perfect calendar for the Jewish people. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is that the first day of the week here is actually Wednesday. Wednesday is the day that the sun and the moon were created. In the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth is void and without form. And God said, let there be light. But that light is what we consider the heavenly light. And day 1, day 2, day 3, we still don't have the sun and the moon. Only on the 4th day does the Bible say that the moon and the sun are created. And then God tells us that these will be the signs for the days, the weeks, the months, the years. And therefore, this specific calendar begins on a Wednesday as the first of the month. And then we have a wonderful passage that we actually mentioned once or twice, which talks about Passover being on the 14th day of the first month. Why do we call it the first month? So in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 2, it tells us, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. And then it continues in the same chapter to talk about the 14th day of this month being Passover. So Passover is in the spring. And during the spring, we, of course, celebrate the festival of Passover every single year. And therefore, it is on the 14th of the first month. And then I said something very strange. I said that in modern day Jewish calendar, we celebrate on the 7th month, the first day of the 7th month. We call that Rosh Hashanah. We call that in Hebrew Rosh Hashanah, which is Jewish New Year's, but it is the 7th month. Now, the Bible doesn't call it New Year's. The Bible calls it the Feast of Trumpets or the Blasts of Horns. What happened? Okay, let's try and figure out what it is that happened. The Jewish temple is destroyed in the year 70 or so by the Romans. This is 70 Common Era or AD. And when the Jewish temple was destroyed, the Jewish people still thought that it would take maybe 50 years, a little bit more than that, and the Romans will calm down, we, the Jewish people, will calm down, and we will be able to rebuild God's house. We will be able to rebuild the temple. That proved to be wrong. And slowly we understand that we are going to have to face a new Jewish world without a temple. And the rabbis sat down together and they decided that in order to keep Judaism alive, we're going to have to switch from what we call biblical Judaism, giving sacrifices at the temple at their proper time, to rabbinical Judaism. And this is the time that we move from Beit HaMikdash to Beit HaMidrash, from the Jewish temple to the Jewish synagogues. And instead of a morning public offering at the temple, the Jewish people started to pray. And instead of an afternoon public offering at the temple and an evening public offering at the temple, the Jewish people are praying. Now, this is supposed to be a temporary issue. Once the temple will be rebuilt, we'll go back to sacrificing. However, it's been ingrained in our tradition for the past 2,000 years because we don't have a temple. And slowly, the Jewish rabbis not only took upon themselves the interpretation of the Bible, they also took upon themselves the divine time. Remember that the temple is also the holder of the divine time, God's calendar or God's time. And now we have to control the time as well. This is nothing new. Every time somebody conquers an area, he has his own calendar and he enforces it on others. According to calendars, this is when we pay taxes. According to calendars, we know when our holidays are. According to the calendars, we know what we are supposed to do. And therefore, there is this issue of controlling time, controlling people through the control of time. We go to the Bible again. And in the Bible, in the book of Kings, First Kings, we see the split between the 10 northern tribes and Judea and Benjamin. Judea and Benjamin are held by Rechavam, and the 10 tribes in the north are held by Yerovam. And what happens is that Yerovam is afraid that if the Jewish people, the Israelite people that he is controlling, will continue to go to Jerusalem and give their sacrifices there, they will also pay their taxes there. So the first thing that he does is he builds two different altars, one in Dan in the north, one in Bethel. This is the south area that the southernmost area that he controls. And he changes the day of the festival of Sukkot from the 15th of the 7th month to the 15th of the 8th month. Let's see if we can find this specific Bible verse. 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 32, and Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he went up unto the altar, so did he in Bethel, to sacrifice unto the cows that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. So we see here that Jeroboam, the king of the north, is changing the dates of the festival so that the Israelites that are under his rule won't be going to Jerusalem anymore, and he can have their taxes as well. The Levites lost their control, the link to God is lost, and the rabbis took over. Now, a new religious center is going to be created. Instead of Jerusalem, we go a little bit to the northwest to a town called Yavne, and a revolution ensues. We move from biblical Judaism to rabbinical Judaism, the house of God, the divine time, to the house of prayer. And this is a radical change. The rabbis allow themselves to interpret God's words, as we already mentioned. They also invaded God's time. The lunar-based calendar, whenever it was adopted, becomes the official calendar for the Jewish people. Over the next 1900 years until modern day times, there are changes here and there. They fix it a little bit. They had different ways of adding, whether it was a month or a few days, because of the discrepancy between the 354 days of a lunar calendar and the 365 and a quarter days of the solar calendar. It wasn't only for control. The reigning thought was that God has turned his back to us, and therefore therefore the authority of God has passed to us, the people. The rabbis adopted the Greek calendar based on the moon, and as part of this revolution, decreed that the first day of the 7th month will be Jewish New Year's. So now we are celebrating New Year's in the 7th month. Let me take you back a minute to this diagram. Remember that we talked about seasons in this area, in this diagram. So this is springtime over here. And of course, we have summer, even though it's not called summer, just for our sake. And every time we have that +1 here, 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 we are entering into a new season. In reality, what the rabbis are doing is they're calling the beginning of this season, this is the 7th month, the new year. And the rabbis are saying that there are 4 different new years. There is one new year here. This is the first month of the year, and this is God's new year. And this is when man was created. According to some of the Jewish scholars, man was created on the first day of the 7th month, and therefore we should start counting the years, Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year's, from the 7th month. It doesn't negate the fact that this is the first month, because even in modern day Judaism, I know this is a little bit confusing, we celebrate the Jewish New Year's on the first of the 7th month. They still call this the 7th month. And Sukkot is on the 15th of the 7th month. We actually have 4, as I said, 4 different new years. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they just switched the New Year's from here to a New Year's over here, 7th month. Now, one of the holidays celebrated, which is not mentioned in the Jewish Bible, is called Hanukkah. Hanukkah is supposedly celebrated on the 10th month, right here, on the 25th of the 10th month. Does that sound familiar? When is Christmas celebrated? Christmas is celebrated on the 25th of December. Now remember what we talked about. December is supposedly the 10th month. There's no difference. Only they then added January and February, so nowadays it's on the in the 12th month. Now let's take a look at this a little bit more clearly. Dive into it, as we say. The 21st of the month today, the 21st, 22nd, is the shortest day of the year. And they knew this already in Egyptian times. They knew that the days are getting longer starting around the 22nd or the 23rd. They knew for sure that the 25th is a longer day than the previous days. And therefore, the 25th of that month was already celebrated 4,000 years ago or so, 3,500 years ago, as the sun's birthday. Even the Greek king at some point mandated that his birthday will be celebrated on the 25th of that month. The name of the month doesn't really matter right now. Now, when we have a religion conquering a people that are celebrating, the masses are celebrating on a specific day, usually they will not cancel the celebration. They will adopt the celebration to fit their own needs. So since we're already celebrating on this day, don't say it's a festival for the sun, say that it's Hanukkah. Now, what is Hanukkah all about? Hanukkah is a feast of dedications. The temple was desecrated for 3 years. The Jewish people following the leadership of the Hasmoneans, family of Kohanim, managed to kick the Greeks out of Jerusalem, and then they had to purify the temple, and they rededicated it to God. The word Chanukah in Hebrew means dedication or rededication. So they are celebrating the rededication, and they decided to celebrate this on the 25th of the 10th month. When you go to the book of Maccabees, it actually tells us that they are going to celebrate for 8 days. What they are really doing is celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles at the wrong time of the year. Now, since the temple was desecrated, they were not able to celebrate the original dates that God mandated for us to celebrate. And the last celebration that they missed, if we are now in the 10th month, then the last celebration that they missed was the celebration of tabernacles in the 7th month, the 15th day in the 7th month. And that celebration, all in all, is 8 days. So the Hasmoneans are celebrating from the 25th of the month for 8 days. Now Christianity comes along, and instead of saying, you know, don't celebrate at all, they're making it their own. And instead of the festival for the sun or Hanukkah, let's just call it Christmas. And the 25th becomes known also as Christmas. If we're celebrating the birth of a Jewish child, and he was born on the 25th, on the 8th day of a Jewish boy's life, we have what we call a brit, circumcision. Um, Circumcision comes from Abraham when he makes a covenant with God. And let's see what happens when we count 8 days from Jesus's birthday. If he was born on the 25th, then he is 2 days old on the 26th, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 8 days old on January 1st. At least in modern day calendars, it would be January 1st. And January 1st today is known as Christian New Year. Yet if we count from the 25th of December to January 1st, and we see that this is the 8th day of Jesus' child, we are actually celebrating the most well-known circumcision there ever was. Now, no matter which celebration we're celebrating, whether it is the 3,500-year-old pagan celebration of the sun, or we are celebrating the celebration of Hanukkah or Christmas, it all revolves around light. Look at that. No matter where you are, who you are, and what time in history you are in, the 25th made its mark as a celebration of lights. We are lighting candles on Hanukkah. The first day, one, the second day, two, three candles, the fourth, the third day, and the eighth day, we light 8 candles. In Christmas, I remember when I was living in the United States, I would go around the neighborhood and other places. We would drive around the area just to see the Christmas lights on all the houses. It was beautiful. It's so cheerful. So we have that remnant because we are building one on top of another. Islam sees itself as the continuation of Judaism and Christianity. Muhammad is the descendant of Ishmael, who is the son of Abraham. And Jesus was Jewish, born in a Jewish family, to a Jewish family, operated in the Jewish world. When he calls God Father, it is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just like the Jewish people believe. And not only are the stories taken one from the other, and the traditions are taken one from the other. Remember the high place to let everybody know what time of day it is. Also, the buildings and the holidays are somehow connected. And here I just showed you a connection even to the pagan days, maybe. Take it or leave it. Of course, this is only a theory. The Jewish holidays are the base. Easter is celebrated right around Passover, right? Because it was on Passover that they sentenced Jesus. He dies on the cross. He is buried and then he's resurrected all in the course of the time of year that Passover is celebrated in the city of Jerusalem. This was a lot to take in, I know. And I'm going to put this online in the next 2-3 days. You can go back and try to see what it is. Maybe you missed something. Maybe I lost you a little bit here and there. I hope it was as clear as possible. And if there are any questions, you are more than welcome to write them down in the chat, or you know what, just unmute yourself and let's take some questions. So that concludes another webinar. I hope you enjoyed. I will be thrilled to see you next time, and we'll let you know via email when the next time is. Signing off. It was great to have you. Bye-bye.